Hello, hello. I'm Holly. I love books. I love plants. I love cats. Let's talk about it. Today, I have two books I'd like to talk about that have been part of my Southern Gothic horror that I've been reading as part of Summerween. One is This Cursed House by Sandeen, and the other one was actually an audiobook, When the Reckoning Comes by LaTanya McQueen. These two books pair together really well because they are handling a very similar subject matter but doing it differently. Both books are dealing with the topic of the repercussions of slavery in the South in the more modern day setting. Still slightly different timelines, but the idea being, how is slavery still felt? Can you ever really leave such horror behind? Does it ever really leave the land and leave the people and leave the story? Of these two books, I did strongly prefer one over the other. We're going to get into it. The first book I want to talk about is This Cursed House by Sandeen. This is about Gemma Baker, a black teacher living in Chicago in 1962 America. She ends up losing her job as a teacher, but almost immediately thereafter is offered a very convenient position working at a manor in New Orleans. So she takes the position, assuming that it's going to be some kind of a tutoring position. She travels down south to get to this manor, which in and of itself is a nice story to tell in terms of a black woman moving from Chicago in the north to New Orleans in the south in 1960s America, and watching as the racism just literally keeps creeping into the train car as she is approaching her destination. And when she gets there, the clear segregation that is still built into the society, much more on the nose than in Chicago. She gets to New Orleans, she gets to the manor, and she finds out that the manor is full of adults. There are no children there. And she's realizing she's not there in a tutoring position. You do also find out very early on with the Duchamp family. I mean, one of the first sentences said is they proudly proclaim that they have black heritage too. However, they pass totally white. Gemma is definitely a black woman. The Duchamp family, they look white. Even though they say they have this black heritage and seem to own up to it, they very clearly want to be seen, perceived as, pass as white. So Gemma basically joins the household as a second class citizen, not only in that she's hired help, but she's black and she looks black. However, the family believes that Gemma is the one who can save them from a curse. That's why she's there. That's basically the catalyst for the whole rest of the story. And really, all of this is basically in the blurb of the book. I haven't really given anything away. That's just the story leading up to what becomes the real crux of the novel. At this point, I'm going to go into what I call soft spoilers. If you want a completely blank slate going into this book, I wouldn't keep going with this review here. But there could not be a softer spoiler because this is literally revealed in the first sentence on the first page of the book. Gemma can see ghosts. And when she gets to the manor, there's more ghosts. So that's the lead in for her trying to figure out what's going on with this family. The whole time, though, that she's expected to try to figure out how to break this curse for the family, they are treating her horribly. Mostly the older members of the family, it couldn't be more obvious. They just can't even stand the fact that she's there. They think nothing of her. There are two people in the house that are more of the age of Gemma, Lawrence and Fawcett. There's a lot of drama going on there too, but they seem to be, a little more accepting of Gemma. But I mean, boy, that is not saying much. Another soft spoiler about Gemma: she did not have a great upbringing. She is desperate for a sense of love, a sense of family, a sense of belonging. And she ends up sort of putting on the family, the Duchamp family, the idea that if she solves this curse, if she can save them, then they might accept her. She might become a part of the family. The family could not have been more clear that she was less. But Gemma, for hundreds of pages, has this internal monologue about wanting to be part of the family and wanting to, especially the younger ones, her age, Lawrence and Fawcett, she wants to save them. And honestly, I don't know why. My cat's at the door. Hold on. Mortimer's back. Okay. Anyway, we're never even really told why she's supposed to have formed this bond with the younger members of the family. For the most part, she actually ends up being bored having to spend all of this time with them, and she's tired of them, and no wonder they aren't nice. The family just kept lying to her. They refused to give her any details that she pretty obviously needed to try to figure this curse out, while at the same time constantly berating her for not figuring the curse out sooner, when they refused to tell her what was really going on. Over and over and over, these situations happen where Gemma finally gets all frustrated and she sits the family down and says, I need to know what's going on. And it seems like she's going to be over it and just walk out and leave them to deal with the curse themselves. But she never really does that. She sits them down. She gets maybe one more little iota of truth out of them, and we just go right back into the same cycle. I was so ready for her to just say, screw you guys, I'm going home unless you tell me the truth. And she just never did it. I wanted her to grow a backbone, I guess is what I'm saying. And I also happen to love me witches and magic, and I'm thinking we're getting into this curse. We're learning about some magic system. There's going to be some reveal on how it all comes together, and that was also very anticlimactic to me. I kept holding out for it, but it's just obvious. She's supposed to talk to the ghosts she's seeing to figure out what's happening. So Gemma sees ghosts. She's tried to deal with it all her life. It's been beaten into her that she should not talk to ghosts. She should not confront them. She should turn away from it. For the majority of the book, it is her either beating herself up about wanting a family or beating herself up about talking to ghosts. It's never really explained what Gemma is doing to try to work the way out of this curse. She's in this house for months. She arrives in September and is there all the way through March. And nothing is ever really said about what she's doing to figure out this curse beyond translating a French book, which is actually mostly falling on Lawrence to do because he's the one who can speak French. So she's not even really doing that. What is she doing for months except being beaten down by the family, but constantly saying how she wants to be part of the family? My biggest problem with it was how much of the book was spent on this drama she's having about being part of the family. It was never going to happen. It was obvious it was never going to happen. It was so exhausting. I actually soft DNF'd this book 3 times because I got so sick of reading the same thoughts over and over. But I really wanted to know where the story was going because I think it's a fascinating take on this idea of post slavery. You are white, but you have some black. But you had slaves, and the Duchamp family, they had slaves. How do you put those two together? What is your identity when you are passing white, but your lineage includes slaves? This is a story much more about love and forgiveness. And that is a lovely sentiment. I wanted to burn the whole thing down. I was ready for much more of a dramatic finale to what was going on with this family and having to really face the slavery background and what is in their blood. And I was expecting much more fanfare and fireworks, and it just kind of went out with a whisper and was really about love and forgiveness. I wasn't expecting that. It was anticlimactic for me. Apparently, I have some issues. I was ready for much more. So go into it knowing that this is much more about the slow burn of dealing with your internal demons than it is about literal demons. For me, it was the redundancy that was the issue. I think if this book had been trimmed down by like 100 pages, I would have been much happier with it. I think it would have been a much stronger story. The forward momentum would have kept going. That being said, there were a couple of twists in this story that I think were supposed to be the catalyst to keep the story moving forward, to keep that pacing. Problem was, I figured out all the twists really early on. I don't think that was actually the issue a lot of other people had. For some reason, I knew what the reveals were, and it kind of ruined it for me, I think. So don't think too much going into it. just just enjoy being in Gemma's head, be on that emotional journey with her. And if you're ready for that, I think you'll enjoy the book a lot more than I did. I just had a different expectation than it delivered, but I still stand by the idea of what the story is. This passing as white and black, 1960s America, slavery as a backdrop, solid story. I just wish it had more at the end. I am not coming across as a very nice person on this. Then I read When the Reckoning Comes by LaTanya McQueen. And actually, I listened to this one. It was an audiobook, and the narrator was Carrie Young. And give that woman a prize. Wow. Wow. I'm actually a person who usually can't do audiobooks. I'm much more a hard copy person. I really like to read a spooky story to get into it. It just draws me in more. I don't get so distracted. Audiobooks usually have to be much more of these lighthearted little cozy stories for me. But this one I was only able to get as an audiobook, so that's how I went into it. And I actually started listening to it while I was just chopping vegetables for dinner at night. And right off the bat, this was so beautifully, hauntingly read to me. I just stopped what I was doing and I just listened and realized, whoa, 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 whoa. I need to experience this one. So I actually listened to it, and at regular speed, I did not speed this up. Listen to the intro of this book at regular speed. Let Carrie Young's molasses voice just drip the words to you. You will feel spirits crawling up your spine. You will feel things. This is another book that is dealing with, again, the repercussions of slavery. This is the modern day that this one is taking place. It's really centered around Mira, Jesse, and Celine. You're actually covering three different timelines in this book: Mira, Jesse, and Celine as children, as adults, and you're having flashbacks where the narrator is giving voice to slaves. Nothing has made the story of slavery a more visceral, painful, beautiful, terrifying thing. Whenever she came on to read the interstitial portions in between where you're hearing the modern day story, I just slowed that baby down and listened to her speak to my soul. God, it's so good. In between the interstitials, again, we have Mira, Jesse, and Celine. Mira and Jesse are black, Celine is white. Mira, Jesse, and Celine grew up in a fairly poor area of North Carolina that also had the old Woodman's Plantation on it, where slavery was rampant in the area. Celine having paired with them when they were younger was a unique thing for a white person to do with the black kids, but they all got along. But you also get this take of what it was like to be a white child, even in a poverty stricken area, versus a black child. And then we're also into the present day where Celine is getting married and she wants Mira and Jesse to come to her wedding. This is pretty traumatic for Mira and Jesse for a couple different reasons. When they were children, Mira and Jesse went to the plantation in the woods, which was at that time an abandoned building, just a creepy husk of an old building. And they went in to explore it, and something happened, and it was pretty traumatic. Mira ultimately ended up moving away from the town. She couldn't face it. Jesse didn't really have that option, and he was left dealing with the repercussions from the white townsfolk who thought he had done something wrong. He hadn't, but that was how the white people perceived the black boy being in a place he shouldn't have been. So now Celine, as an adult, wants to have a wedding on this plantation and wants her old black childhood friends to come. The plantation has since been bought and redone into this huge tourist attraction of where white people can come and play the role of a plantation southern belle and gentleman while they watch the reenactments of slavery, making it into a tourist attraction rather than revealing the horror of what it really was. But Celine doesn't really see that. She just sees it as a beautiful place to have a wedding and wants everyone to come, and she wants to see her childhood friends again. And Mira hasn't seen Jesse since it all went down when they were kids, and she really wants to see him. They were good friends and she loved Jesse, and yeah, that soft spot was still there. She wanted to revisit it. Celine talked her into it, so finally they all go to the plantation for Celine's wedding. You pretty quickly find out that the plantation is haunted. There are visions that are happening. The slaves of the past are finding a voice again. That's not really giving it away. That's pretty much known from the blurb on the book. The plantation is haunted. The wedding, it ends up, is going to happen on the anniversary of the night that a slave uprising tried to happen. And there is this energy building among these spirits, it seems. And something might be going down on the night of the wedding. This is not a gory book, and I had actually expected more of that. I mean, it's a reckoning. I thought this might go to a pretty gory place, and it didn't. This was more about witnessing the events that took place against these slaves. It was experiencing what they experienced. It was those slaves having a voice in the modern day to say, this plantation is not a tourist event. Our story is not a tourist event. It was traumatic. It was awful. And it was real. This happened, and not that long ago. So let's deal with it. I actually wish that the ending had taken longer. Perhaps that it had gone to an even darker place. I think my takeaway from this video is I'm a vengeful person. I wanted the slaves to really come down, but that wasn't the point of the story. That's not to say that some deaths don't happen. That's not the point of the story. We aren't there for that. We don't really know whether or not that happened. That was not the point. It was the slaves having a voice. I feel like this book is there to make the reader also come to terms with that past, to read, see, hear that past, and to kind of ask the question, what would happen if the reckoning came? The book kind of ends before that. You're left to fill in what might have happened, how far might it have gone, but I think that is a part of it. You are supposed to have that talk with yourself. What would be the price we would need to pay for what happened? What would the reckoning look like if these slaves could come back? I loved that premise, and it was a powerful, beautiful, haunting, sad story that was terrifying in the fact that it was based in reality. It wasn't terrifying because of the slaves or the ghosts. It was terrifying because you were experiencing what the slaves experienced. I can't imagine, but it happened. And I have never had a history book, textbook, fiction book, I have never had something hit me as viscerally and poetically and hauntingly as this book did. Cannot recommend it enough. If you can't tell, I really strongly preferred When the Reckoning Comes to This Cursed House. However, I do stand by both are really interesting stories about a part of American history that is still being dealt with today. They both voice something powerful, poignant, beautiful. Read these two this summer. Can't recommend them enough. Comment below if you have anything to add. Like if you liked it. And have a great day. Bye. Gemma is desperate for a sense of family, for a sense of belonging. Don't eat my plants.